Welcome everybody back into Nerd Sesh. As always, I'm Carson Bradburn, alongside me is Logan Camden, and it is a wild time in the NBA, folks. We have, of course, the draft tonight, and just so you all know, we are going to be live on our YouTube channel throughout the lottery tonight, reacting to every pick, so make sure to subscribe to the channel so you see that coming, and please come join us. It should be a lot of fun. But the news of the day up to this point is what's been happening in terms of trades around the league. So we've got a couple trades and some rumors to discuss today, but we're going to start with the blockbuster that has already went down, Logan. That being the New York Knicks officially bringing all of the Nova boys back together. Once we get Eric Paschall, once we get Omari Spellman in there, it's going to be a whole Villanova party. They acquire Mikal Bridges from the Nets, giving up Bojan Bogdanovic, 4 of their own first-round picks unprotected, the Bucks 2028 first, and another first-round pick swap of New York's. Logan, what's your reaction to this move for New York?
This is a dream trade for New York. I can't remember how many times on this pod that I mentioned that the dream scenario for New York in this offseason would be to get Mikal Bridges and to bring all the Villanova boys back together. And it really intrigued me, Carson. It seems like the prevailing sentiment across NBA circles is that the Knicks gave up way too much and aren't going to be competitive enough. Quite frankly, I don't care at all about giving up the future first whatsoever. This is a team that wants to contend right now. Their timeline is, we want to go chase a championship right now. And to me, one, the vibes are going to be immaculate. Like, they have now assembled the majority of the 2016 Villanova championship team. This is peak basketball. This is you and your homies going to the league. And what I mean by this is these guys are going to be together. They want to play together. They love each other. So screw the future first. The Knicks have their core locked up for the next 3 to 4 years. And when we're looking at what Mikal Bridges brings to this team, he's the perfect complementary player to add to this group. This is potentially the best defensive wing tandem now in all of basketball if they can bring back OG Anunoby. That is invaluable in today's league. And to the point that a lot of people were saying that they don't think the Knicks are going to be competitive enough, that they don't have enough star punch, I think that they can probably match everything that Boston does defensively. And I think New York has firmly thrusted themselves into the number 2 spot out east behind Boston. They definitely haven't leapfrogged or surpassed Boston by any means, but I think they're firmly number 2, and, any kind of major injury to a Boston top star, and I think the Knicks are right in there. I think we have to contextualize how great the Knicks were post-OG Anunoby trade. This is a team that went 20-3 down the stretch of the regular season. They posted an offensive rating of 121.8 with OG. They posted a defensive rating of 107.8. This was a legitimately great team after that trade, and now they add Mikal Bridges, who, again, we have to contextualize this to the point that he's not going to be a star, right? You're putting him in a number 2 or number 3 role. That's the perfect role for Bridges. I think it's a home run trade. Again, with their timeline, this team wants to contend now. They want to go after a championship right now. I don't care about the future first-round picks. I am doing whatever I can to push my chips into the middle of the table and go try to win and contend right now. And I think the Knicks crushed it. Obviously, there's some ripple effects. They're going to have to let Isaiah Hartenstein go. That sucks. I wonder what goes on with Julius Randle now, but this is a grand slam trade for the New York Knicks. I think they absolutely crushed this and have legitimately leapfrogged teams in the East, and I think they're number 2 out there now.
I like this a lot for the Knicks. It puts them into a tier of legitimate title contenders that they were not previously in. And when you are knocking on the door like they have been, when you're just a piece or so away, absolutely, I am with you going all in to unlock that title ceiling. I will disagree with you, though, when you say that you don't care about those future picks, just because it's such a massive haul. This is a steep price. It is objectively an overpay for Mikal Bridges. And we have seen several teams in recent years, the Nets themselves very much included, have that buyer's remorse for overpaying in terms of draft capital for a star if it ultimately doesn't work out. Basically, if it doesn't bring you a title, you're going to have some regret for that. Now, the Nets didn't get all that close. Could have been different maybe if they were healthy in that 2021 season. We see it, though, already with the Phoenix Suns now, where they're saying that they're committed to trying to win with this core. But the Rockets feel like they put themselves in a good position to do business with the Suns just because they can now give the Suns their own picks back. Like, you are just conceding, okay, we took a loss on this. We don't care. We're in a rough spot. We want control of our own picks. And that's not going to happen for the Knicks, if it does, nearly as soon as it has for these other teams that were much more reliant on, let me add that superstar. Our basketball team isn't as complete nearly as the Knicks. But when you're talking about picks in 2029, 2031, you don't know what things are going to look like. So I do think that the Knicks have great staying power because so much of their core is in that ideal age range and they're sort of mid to late 20s. I'm very optimistic for them. It's just a lot of draft capital, but I'm cool with the overpay considering the situation because Mikal is an awesome fit in New York. And offensively, he was always overtasked in Brooklyn. I never got as high on him as a lot of people did after he had that crazy home stretch of the regular season and playoff series, just because I felt that he's always lacking that sort of avenue to super easy offense, just in terms of athleticism, rim pressure. He's never been the most fluid ball handler, most natural playmaker. He's always been suited to be like the perfect number 3, consistently a 38 to 40% three-point shooter off the catch, guy who can shoot off movement, has a super high release point, very difficult to affect, so he's going to be awesome off ball because of that, and then he's also one of the best cutting wings in the league, and he gives you enough on ball where if he is your third option, he's going to be super efficient, he's going to be productive, he's never going to step on toes, he's just going to make your spacing all that much better, and he's going to absolutely contribute positively to team offense. And then, as you say, if you retain OG, which I think has to be the top priority for New York, you form, without question, the best defensive wing duo in the league. And when you think about the formula to matching up with the Boston Celtics, which is the standard that every team in the East, and damn near every team in the league, needs to be living up to right now, it is crucial in that matchup that you have 2 awesome wing defenders. And that's not to say that the Celtics won't find the way to pinpoint your small guard on the floor through mismatch attacking. They'll do their damnedest. But if you have 2 elite wing defenders who can match up with Jason Tatum and Jalen Brown legitimately, that is an advantage that really nobody else around the league would have to this extent. So that to me is a big win of this trade, and you're just adding great talent. So if you look at their formula now, you have a superstar creator in Jalen Brunson, you have awesome defensive wings who are both great complementary offensive players as well. And when you talk about people thinking that the Knicks don't have enough juice, I don't get that, because you have to consider the sort of singular offensive engine that Jalen Brunson is, Logan. This team was the number 6 offense after Julius Randle got hurt. They were the number 2 playoff offense without Julius Randle, obviously, without Bojan Bogdanovic for extended stretches, without OG Anunoby for extended stretches. Like, that is how overwhelming Jalen Brunson individually is, and the power of their collective offensive rebounding, just how many possessions they secure for themselves on that end. So you have all that going for you. You do have really good spot-up shooting now, which was a major improvement from last year already. That just gets even better with Mikal. You have great depth. Like, you're checking so many boxes. You play together. You have great chemistry. You have a clear identity. That's a team that can win the title. Absolutely. The really interesting part to me, Logan, is where does Julius Randle factor into the equation here? And so when we look at next steps, that's the first thing that stands out to me. What do you think they do with Julius Randle? And what are the other key next steps throughout this offseason that can really dial in this Knicks roster?
That's the big question to me too, man, because there is a weird Frankenstein-esque jumbo lineup that you could run with Julius Randle, right? You could have this Brunson, Bridges, Anunoby, Randle, Robinson group, or without him, which I probably like this group way more. It's way more similar to the one that we saw in the playoffs. You have Brunson, DiVincenzo, Bridges, Anunoby at the 4, and then Robinson at the 5. I don't know, man, because Julius Randle is such a polarizing player in terms of what he gives you at his absolute peak and what he gives you at his absolute floor, right? Julius Randle, in many ways, is a guy that could put New York over the top if he's really on for a playoff run in terms of what he can do in getting downhill, weaponizing his strength and physicality, how great he can be when his pull-up jump shooting is on. Like, Randle's a really good offensive player when he's cooking, but we've seen 2 playoff runs where he is completely let this team down. Now that they have Mikal, and considering that I've been a Julius Randle skeptic and that his contract isn't that bad, I would probably shop him just because I feel like Randle's a little bit expendable at this point. And there's just more flexibility and cohesion with this group where, you talk about this beautiful flowing offense that we got from New York in these playoffs where nobody's stepping on any toes. And with Bridges in the equation, I feel like it's going to be, kicked up a notch. Randle, in a lot of ways, I feel like could potentially screw this up a little bit. Maybe taking the offense out of rhythm like he likes to do, taking dumb pull-up mid-range jumpers that are inefficient that he's not going to hit. I would probably try to shop Julius Randle as best I could, and maybe that's what you do. You do a little bit of that Indiana Jones, right? We don't completely lose our future picks. We maybe move Randle for a pick or two down the line, so we do have some picks, or another role player, maybe a backup 5. Is there any way you think this could work with Randle in the lineup? Like, that's the thing, man. It isn't the worst contract, and I could see this working, but I could also see Randle kind of screwing this up. I would shop him, but I wouldn't just give him away for nothing, right? I'd have to make sure that I'm getting enough assets back for Julius.
So, I am not a Julius Randle guy, and I never have been. But in some ways, I think I'm more optimistic about how this could work with Julius Randle. You call it a Frankenstein lineup that they would have out there. I don't think of it that way. I just think it'd be a big-ass lineup. But, like, Mikal can absolutely play the two. He is, in fact, better at guarding guards than he is at guarding bigger wings. Like, that's where he excels most defensively. OG, super versatile defensive and offensive player. And if you want to maintain that elite rebounding, you do that unless Josh Hart is in your starting lineup, which he wouldn't be, right? The team is just too talented at this point, with having a big-ass front court. Like, Julius Randle is one of the best rebounding fours in the league. And the thing is, if you find yourself in a matchup where you feel like, okay, Randle is a little bit slow-footed here. We want to be quicker. We want to be more dynamic defensively. And he's really struggling offensively, right? He's doing all the bad stuff, taking us out of rhythm, taking and missing bad shots. Then you can just bench him. Like, so long as he can accept that in terms of ego, which I do think is a fair question, you're just oozing with basketball talent. So you don't have an obligation to play him, but he provides the upside of being like a big-ass mismatch attacking 4 who can legitimately give you 25 a night on good efficiency, who is a capable playmaker when things are going really well, and when things are going poorly, like, yeah, it gets really, really ugly, but you are not bound to playing him 35 minutes because you have so many options. If you want to go with a Brunson, DiVincenzo, Bridges, OG center lineup, of course, that is super viable. If you want to have Josh Hart in there instead of DiVincenzo, if you want to have Deuce McBride, like, you have a crazy amount of options. And I do think if you were to move him, you would have to trade him for lesser basketball talent. That's just not even really a question. Nobody is trading for Julius Randle at like the value that he can provide when he's at his best. You're going to take a loss in terms of win now value no matter what. It's basically going to be, okay, can we clear up a little cap to now re-sign Isaiah Hartenstein? Because I do think that they're going to have to let him walk if things sit as they are. But if you can trade Randle to a team that can absorb most of that cap, then you have the flexibility to re-sign Hartenstein. Now, you still are maxed out at paying him like $16 million a year, which maybe somebody else tops regardless, but that's probably competitive. Maybe he wants to stay in New York. Maybe you could sell him on that. And then you could have a little flexibility to add a quality role player if you're New York. To me, Hartenstein is the sticking point. He's the guy who, like, I would really want to retain. Any additional depth beyond that, I'd probably be looking to the draft this year because you have picks 24 and 25, and it's going to depend on who's on the board. But I think the two paths that you want to look for at this point, especially now that you've added another really good wing, is a bench ball handler. I love Deuce McBride, but could you have a more legitimate creator, more of an offensively oriented guy? If, say, a Tyler Kolek is still on the board at 24, I would love that. I mean, that is a mature dude who was built to be a high-level backup point guard in this league, and he's such a veteran that I think he will be that from basically day one. And then a big, because you're going to have now either just Robinson or just Hartenstein. One of those guys is going to have to go. Where I think that there's still some decent targets in that range. We talked about maybe getting a Kyle Filipowski who would bring you offensive versatility and some defensive versatility at pick 24 or 25. So I think that there's paths for them to fill out their depth that don't require them trading away the upside that does come with Randle. And I don't think that it's clunky having Bridges, OG, and Randle all out there because I think so highly of Bridges and OG's versatility. I would just be making sure that I have the most talent on my roster because although I think, yes, you could have a more fluid, you could have in some ways a more seamless offense without Julius Randle, and you would have more skill. The burden wouldn't be as insane on Jalen Brunson as it was this past year, but it would still be a really significant burden. Randle is the one dude who can take some of that weight off his shoulders and legitimately help carry you through a series offensively. So unless the right deal is there, I would not be pressed to trade Randle, especially because, okay, you're in no rush to do it this year, right? You play this year out, and then it's Randle either opts in and you can trade him as an expiring, or he walks, and then, like, if your primary objective was to clear up cap anyways, okay, that's going to clear up cap. But you don't have to pay Jalen Brunson that big contract yet. You have 1 year where all these pieces are in place. If you bring back OG, which they should pay him whatever it takes, $40 million, because they can do that, and he is clearly the second most important player to their success, in my opinion, more important than Julius Randle because of how transformative he is defensively and all the offensive value that he brings. They can make it work without trading Randle, at least for this year, in my opinion. But if they do, for the right deal, then I'm good with it.
And considering all of the injury stuff that we saw from the Knicks in the playoffs, too, it might just be valuable having another guy, right? You talk about plugging in the bench guys. If one of your, big wings did go down again, if it was Anunoby, if it is Mikal, which, I hope not. Mikal's been actually like the most consistently healthy guy in the league. We'll see how he holds up with Tibbs' rotation and his minutes, but
it's a fascinating science experiment.
It's going to be, but like you said, man, it's important that you just have really good basketball players, and Randle could be crucial. That's always been the thing, man. It's like I have just this love-hate relationship with Randle, but in a lot of ways, he still might be the X factor to unlocking the offensive ceiling that New York needs to really break through. And I think you make a great point about the jumbo size of this lineup, right? In a lot of ways, it is matching up with Boston, who is still a big-ass team. But if they get through Boston, too, out west, you've still got a lot of jumbo-sized teams that they could potentially face in the finals. If it's Minnesota, if it's Denver, right? That's kind of a prerequisite that you need to check if you're going to make this kind of run. I'm optimistic. I'm not going to get my hopes too much ever about Julius Randle, but I think this thing could work. But bottom line is that the Knicks have now given themselves options, and that's beautiful, man. And if there is a team that is going to overpay or is going to give you enough value for Julius, I might take the bait, but yeah, I'd be in no rush to get him. And those two picks at the bottom of the first round, I'm glad you bring those up, Carson, because I think those are crucial to putting all the pieces together for New York, considering the fact that they're not going to have this surplus of firsts moving forward. I think it's really important that they get two important pieces to come off the bench for them. I wasn't looking at ball handling as much. I was looking more one more big wing off the bench and then one more center. That's what I'd like them to do at the bottom of the first, just because I do trust.
They still need one more big wing?
The only reason I say is just because it is going to give them a little more flexibility if they want to move off of Randle. Because I look at their current bench. DiVincenzo can handle if you need to. Deuce can handle if you need. I get what you're saying too, right? They're not like high-end going to generate great quality shots, but these guys can handle. Josh Hart even a little bit. Right, I don't want him handling the rock, but he's got a little something there. I just don't think it's the most pressing one. But if they get two of those three, I think it's a really good. I think it's a really good draft for New York. If they get center, I think they have to get, because Hartenstein's just a big question mark. So I think you get center with one of those picks, and then with the other you get another big wing, or you get another guard. But I think the Knicks have set themselves up for a lot of success, man. And again, I think they are firmly, with question marks about what Philly's going to do to fill out the rest of their roster, with how far away I think Milwaukee is, New York is firmly, firmly number 2 for me out east.
Absolutely. Right now, it's not even a question. Like, yeah, Philly has the maneuverability. They have the cap to add another legitimate star, and then they could just have the star power factor. But it is insane how many real high quality basketball players we're not talking about on one team where they have the guy offensively, and it's largely intuitive fits. Like, I absolutely love the Knicks. I really do think that heading into next year, like, you're going to have the Celtics as the reigning champs who are maintaining all their talent, so they probably are the presumptive favorite. The Nuggets, if they can maintain KCP, I think probably take that next slot. The Thunder are crazy talented, and they have clear avenues to improvement. And the Knicks, like, we don't know how this offseason is going to pan out, but just based on the outlook of things, I would say those are the top 4 teams to me going into next season. And it's just incredible, the sort of firepower that we are seeing teams add around the league. And it really makes you painfully aware if you missed out on an opportunity, if you are a Denver, you lost to a Minnesota, like, especially with the new CBA, because these windows aren't lasting as long necessarily because of just the difficulty of paying those sort of like crazy luxury tax, getting way up into that second apron. Like, you really feel every time you miss the chance, but everybody else is trying to jump on every opportunity that they have. And I think the Knicks have done an awesome job with that. And when it comes to the bench ball handling, the reason that I think that's more important than another wing for them at this point is I do feel like they're just really pretty stacked with quality wings. Not necessarily big wings, but like if you do have OG and Randle, then you're pretty good on that front. And the Knicks offense had like a 108 offensive rating with Brunson off the floor versus 123 with him on it. Obviously, that's a testament to his greatness. I also do think it's a testament to the lack of bench ball handling, especially in a post-IQ world. So I would like to see them upgrade there. Randle, man. If I trusted Julius Randle, maybe the Knicks would just be the favorite in the East. I mean, it's crazy, dude. Like, we talk about, oh man, the Boston Celtics have 5 top 50-ish players. That doesn't happen. Well, the New York Knicks now have 4 top 60 players, right? And then on top of that, they have Dante DiVincenzo and Josh Hart and Deuce McBride, Mitchell Robinson, like real quality basketball players. Their depth is clearly an advantage over the Celtics once you're talking about the legitimate bench, even though those Boston dudes played well. But to me, the selling point for New York is you're so talented, you don't need to play Randle if it's not the right matchup, if he's out of rhythm, because you would probably be the second best team in the East without him. Like, I don't think that he's that essential to you just being a really good basketball team, but there is a little bit of a ceiling he provides with his shot creation that could be really valuable. On the flip side of this, Logan, for the Nets doing business with their New York counterpart, which hasn't happened in a number of decades. This is the first trade between these two teams in a long time. How does this change things for Brooklyn?
Yeah, the Nets officially have committed to a rebuild, and they've pivoted off of any sort of competitive timeline. They also did a deal with the Houston Rockets to get back their 2025 and 26 first-round picks, which is crucial because now the Nets can actually tank and get their own pick, which is very important. And I'm glad. I think they made the right commitment to a different timeline, and I want to applaud them too. You know, I thought that the Nets were going to lose a ton of value off of all the star trades that they made for Kyrie, for Harden, for KD. It's a masterstroke, man, and that's the importance, right? Anytime a superstar becomes available or you have a superstar that you're looking to move off of, it's important that you don't give up a ton of value off of the asset, right? If it was 2 first-round picks an offseason ago for Mikal, well, the Nets look at that and go, well, somebody is eventually going to pay for more. When you have a guy that you really believe in and that you can fetch more value for, you hold on to that guy, right? You think back to Ben Simmons getting dealt for James Harden. You don't give up value on a guy that you really believe in, and that's the importance. And I just want to applaud Brooklyn for that. I thought they completely gaffed, their superstar trades, moving back off of Harden, back off of Kyrie, back off of KD. And they've not like crushed it, but they have definitely given themselves a competitive timeline in the future, right? The Nets had no future before this deal, and now there's something. There is a silver lining. There is a light at the end of the tunnel where Maybe Brooklyn can be competitive one day. And finally, guys, we get our own first round picks back, right? The 2010s, you give up Tatum and Brown. The 2020s, you have no competitive basketball team. This is a great trade for Brooklyn, and I just want to commend them for holding on to Mikal and for not giving up an asset for less than value. They stuck to their guns, and it ultimately paid off, and now they can actually, hold on to their own first-round picks and hopefully get somebody in the next couple of drafts that's a real superstar that they can build around for the future. So, yeah, man, I just want to commend them for committing to a new timeline and for not giving up a ton of value for Mikal Bridges, man. I think they did a really good job with this one.
It's unequivocally a home run for Brooklyn, and the entire haul that they have gotten for the Kevin Durant trade is absolutely absurd when you consider that they were pretty clearly going nowhere with that configuration, nowhere meaningful. The fact that you got Mikal, Cam, and 4 firsts outright for him, amazing value. Now you trade Mikal for 6 first-round picks in total. Like, that is unbelievable work, because as much as I like Mikal and I think he's a great fit with the Knicks, this is a top 50-ish player, right? And he's 27 years old, which is great for New York because, again, you have a long window that is open. But for the Nets, it's like that guy's already kind of too old. You are so far away. He doesn't have the ceiling to be a number one for you. We've seen that with his limitations as a high-end offensive creator. So he's not all that valuable to you in your long-term outlook. And you get absolutely insane value for him. You just won 32 games, right? You're not going anywhere in the immediate future. And as of 24 hours ago, you didn't have your own picks. And so that is where this, in conjunction with the Rockets trade that they made to get back their picks over the next 2 years, is really massive, because getting this sort of value for Mikal is great. But if you're tanking and you're not reaping the rewards by actually being able to use your own picks, like, it is significantly diminished. Now you can just embrace it. You can be the worst team in the league and just stockpile premier young talent. You have a clear direction, and that's what the Nets had been lacking, even when they did get really good value back for like a KD, because they were like, okay, well, we're still incentivized to try to be competitive because we don't have our own picks. There is clarity now that is extremely valuable, and they got a really, really awesome return for Mikal. So congratulations to the Nets. You guys can officially embrace the tank, and I think you will be rewarded for that. Get ready for a night full of big fights and big action. It's UFC 303, and it can be even bigger. Jump in on all the action at DraftKings Sportsbook, the official sports betting partner of UFC.
It's super easy for first-timers to get started. Try betting on something simple like picking a fighter to win. Go to the DraftKings Sportsbook app, select your fighter, and place your first bet. It's that simple. The light heavyweight title is on the line in the main event, but there are so many more amazing matchups happening in Vegas.
And speaking of amazing, if you're new to DraftKings, listen up. New customers can bet $5 to get $150 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code NERDS. That's code NERDS for new customers to get $150 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Get that big fight feel only on DraftKings. DraftKings, the crown is yours. So, as we mentioned, the Nets also did business with the Rockets to get their first-round picks back in 25 and 26, giving the Rockets the Suns picks in 2025 and 27, their first-rounders, and a pick swap in 2029. And the reporting around this is the Rockets want to go big game hunting. They want to add a legitimate star, and particularly their eyes are on Kevin Durant, and they think that the fact that they have the Suns picks and they can give them autonomy over their future again because things didn't go so well in the first year of their experiment, that would be very appealing to them. Now, the reporting is that the Suns are not of that mind and that they do want to continue with this core, but what do you make of those rumors, Logan?
I think it's mutually beneficial for the Suns and KD to part ways. I really think Phoenix should read the writing on the wall and just bite the bullet, right? 1, the West is super tough. 2, your stars do not work together. And 3, your roster is not particularly close. So the Suns could recoup some assets for the future and try to build the best roster around Devin Booker and Bradley Beal for the time being. You also clear up some cap space hypothetically, maybe get a few young assets from Houston, and Kevin Durant gets a much more ready to contend roster behind him, right? The Rockets were 41-41 last season, and by no means do I think that the Rockets are immediately a title contender. They would probably be pretty low on that totem pole for me, somewhere in that 5 to 8 range out west. But KD gets a much better roster behind him, and the Suns are still going to be competitive, right? By no means do I think the bottom's about to fall out with Devin Booker and Bradley Beal. Are they going to be worse? Yes, probably, but there's not really many ways in which I see this ending up great for Phoenix, Carson. I don't think this core works. I don't think KD, Beal, and Book work. I don't think there's enough talent down the rest of the roster to make this work, right? The bottom line is this team is probably going to win somewhere in the 40s of games, and they're going to get bounced in the first round. That's not the goal, man. The goal is to be better than that. The goal is to win the title. So I just think the Suns have to realize that, and have to realize that they're not going to win a title with this group, and at least just get something for the future. Get a couple of young guys from the Rockets, whoever they may be, whoever they're willing to give up. Get some firsts from them, probably a little more than just your own first-round picks. I'd like to get a few extra because I'm giving up Kevin Durant, who I still believe is a Tier 1 kind of superstar and leader. And for Houston, I think it's more interesting looking at this at Houston's side. Like, I think it's important that Houston doesn't give up too many young assets, right? I'm giving up one of Sengun or Jabari Smith Jr. with another young guy, probably like a Cam Whitmore or something like that. I don't want to give up Jalen Green. I don't want to give up Amen Thompson. I don't want to give up guys like that. I just think it makes a little too much sense for the Suns and KD, though. That's who I'm interested in. And I also don't believe that the Suns aren't talking about this, Carson. I don't get how this rumor comes up if both of these teams aren't talking to one another. I don't get how we're going, how are you talking if it's just no immediately? I don't really buy in that the Suns aren't interested in this trade, and I think the Suns should be interested in this trade. At this point, I think it is in the best interest of both of these major parties, the Suns and Kevin Durant, to part ways, and KD gets to go back home to Texas. He gets a new roster that is a lot better behind him. He can be the number one leader on that group, the de facto superstar. The Suns can still be competitive, but there's a little bit more of a future there. Because think about this, the alternative for Phoenix if they don't do this. Would you run this core back for the next 2 to 3 years? You win 40 games every single year, and then KD and Book just leave, and Bradley Beal just leaves? There's just in no way that if the Suns don't make this deal, they can become a real contender to me. And if you're not going to be a real contender, then don't worry about it, man. We'll move on to the next timeline, and we'll see if we can put a different competitive team, a better team with better role players behind D-Book and Beal. I think it makes a lot of sense for Phoenix and Kevin Durant to do this deal and to explore what they could make happen, because the Rockets have a lot of assets that I think would be intriguing for Phoenix. But what do you think, Carson?
If I were the Suns, I would be over the moon at this sort of opportunity, because I do think that there is a pretty clear ceiling on their current roster configuration, and it's not a maneuverable situation. You have no flexibility, and this was the dilemma going into last year. It was the reality that your title window had closed. You tried to reopen it by trading for KD, but CP was no longer viewed as a positive asset. DeAndre Ayton's value had diminished. You were just working with scraps. And then you got Bradley Beal, which was better value than you could have expected to get back for CP. But at the end of the day, it left you with no ability to improve your surrounding roster to the level that would contend with the other best teams in the West. And I think that that is still the situation for Phoenix. They don't have avenues to meaningful improvement, and they need to improve by a lot. And if you could get Sengun and all your firsts back, that in and of itself is an absolute win to me. And I'm not the highest on Sengun. I worry a little bit about having him anchor your defense Obviously, Houston put a good defense together with him anchoring the 5. They also have really good defensive personnel. I worry a little bit about his efficiency as a lead scoring big, the lack of floor spacing still at this stage. Like, I am not optimistic he's an all NBA level guy, but I think he is going to be a fringe star story guy and a really, really good offensive player. And he's obviously young. And now you have your own draft capital back. Whereas it's like you're talking about KD at 35 years old and the window just isn't there. What I don't understand is why the Rockets think that this is the right approach. Like, if you are going to go out there and try to add a star, first of all, you should be calling Phoenix about Devin Booker, not Kevin Durant. And I understand if the thought is just Phoenix will never trade Devin Booker. But, like, come on, man. You have crazy assets to throw at them because the package for Book would be way bigger than the package for KD. Now we're talking about multiple young players. We're talking about all of their picks back and the number 3 pick in this draft and maybe another first on top of that, right? Like, I haven't figured out exactly what the value would be. It would be a lot, though, and it would be a good bit more than KD considering just the massive difference in age. But that's not who they're targeting, apparently. And if I were Houston and looking to add the sort of front court star who would put me into some more legitimate conversations, it would be versatile forwards in their mid-late 20s. It would be a Lauri Markkanen if you could possibly get Utah to move off of him by just offering a great package. Maybe you buy low on a Brandon Ingram. I don't necessarily love it because of the lack of volume 3-point shooting from Ingram. I don't think that he's the easiest offensive fit in a situation where you already have some shooting inconsistency, but it makes more sense than Kevin Durant. Like, the notion that you are close enough to be trading for stars in their mid-30s, KD, if not him, Jimmy Butler, Paul George, any of these dudes who are going to be on the market, like, that is just silly to me. You have so many pieces who are so talented, but are legitimately far away still. I love Amen Thompson. I think he has potential to be best perimeter defender in the world, best rebounding wing in the world, maybe best transition player in the world. Like, he is an absolute freak athlete. But at this point, still, you have no semblance of a jump shot from him, and you haven't really tapped into his playmaking, ball handling. Like, he's just giving you that crazy athleticism mostly at this point. Jalen Green had an awesome tear towards the end of the regular season. He still unequivocally needs to be more consistent in terms of shot selection and efficiency and playmaking. And these are like some of your cornerstone guys, right? We're mentioning some of the questions we still have about Şengün. Maybe you move him, but you're not a Kevin Durant away. Like, you were the number 20 offense last year. You got to 41 wins. By the way, you were 18th in net rating on the back of heart, defense, athleticism as a young team. Sure, but they're just too young. They're too far away. Like, they would not be close, in my opinion, to being like the team out west. No way. I mean, Denver would be lapping you. OKC would be lapping you. Minnesota would be comfortably ahead of you, in my opinion. And I understand you're tired of picking at the top of the draft. You're looking at this number 3 pick and you're like, what do we even do with this? We have a young stud, a young guy with immense potential at every position group. We have our guards. We have our wing. We have our big. But this isn't the move to pivot away from that, in my opinion. It's about trading for guys who make sense with your timeline. That is not Kevin Durant.
Yeah, and it begs the question, why even rush the process, right? You overachieved last season, and there's a lot of ball to go around for all of these young guys to improve. And so you add in a Kevin Durant, and it's like, okay, are we going to be competitive in 2 to 3 years when these guys get better? Well, KD's going to be 37, 38 then, and we don't know what he's going to look like. So you're just sat there wondering, like, what's the point in accelerating this process? And that is the area where I don't understand this. Because, again, when you're going out and getting Kevin Durant, you're going to be giving up one or multiple of these young assets that you really like, that are improving. So I agree with you, man. That's why I don't understand why the Suns aren't jumping all over this. Like, to me, the Rockets are the suckers of this trade. Like, I am taking Houston for all that they are going to give me.
Yeah. I wonder, Logan, how much of it is, as we've discussed with Phoenix before, the sunken cost fallacy on their end of feeling like, okay, we've gone all in, but you wouldn't even be taking a loss. But again, it would be like, oh, please give us our picks back that we already traded away for Kevin Durant on top of Mikal Bridges and Cam Johnson. Now you could get a good player back, so that's a different dynamic there. But I think that could still be part of it. And the other part that I wonder is like, if KD just can't stomach the idea of having to pivot off another situation, of being known eternally as the guy who tried to be his own GM, who tried to put together the units of tough-ass buckets of dudes he would want to play threes with, and it just consistently didn't work out. Now you're talking about him jumping to team number 5. I wonder if he just doesn't want to take that for his ego, for his image, even if it would put him in a better situation. Not that Houston would be the best winning situation, but maybe anywhere where he would have a better chance to contend. I wonder if he just doesn't want to be the most stereotypical version of Kevin Durant.
And maybe I think that might be a component of it. And then maybe he's also just exhausted. Maybe KD's kind of just tired of moving around. Like, he's like, I like Phoenix. I don't want to go anywhere. And I do think there's a lot of merit to what you're saying about the front office for Phoenix, though. I can definitely imagine Ishbia going, and this isn't even like, we gave up all these assets to do it, and maybe the front office still thinks that there's a way that this works out, and they're still going to be competitive. Like, maybe they are just delusional to the point that they actually think that these three guys can work together. I don't think there's a chance, like, at all. I just think that the rest of this roster is so far away in terms of what they bring with defense, with rebounding, with aggregate playmaking. Like, I just think there's too many holes in this roster, but I think it's all of that. And again, the final component is the fact that the Suns would be admitting we got it wrong. And that's hard. It's hard to admit that we got it wrong, but I'm jumping over it. If Houston offers me a deal where I can move off of him. And again, KD doesn't even have a say in this potentially, right? Bradley Beal's the guy with the no trade clause, so you could just ship off KD if you wanted to do it. I'm jumping all over this trade if I'm Phoenix, man, and I am. Again, I don't think it makes that big a difference, Carson, in the win-loss total, right? The Suns won, 46 games last season? I think
49.
if you run it, 49, I think if you run it back with D-Book and Beal and you pivot to moving some of the talent to the rest of the roster, I think you're probably like a 500 team. You're 43, 44 wins. And again, you have your own first-round picks. I'm doing this
back.
And I would be playing hardball if I'm Phoenix. I would be telling Houston, oh, no, we're not interested in this at all, to run the assets up, to make KD's value go up. But I'm doing this trade if Houston's genuinely interested in making it happen.
I would agree. There's not a great path out of the situation that Phoenix is in. There just isn't. Because you get your picks back and it's like, okay, great, we have them, but our goal has been to win now, to contend around Devin Booker and whatever the core around him looks like. That's what happens when you reach the finals in 2021 and then you win 64 games in 2022. But it's like aging Chris Paul was a core part of that. He was your second best player. That's not easily replaced when that guy just falls off a cliff and you have to compromise all of your depth to try to supplement what you've lost through CP3's decline with a star player like KD. It's just really, really tough. And if you're the Rockets, I just don't think you want to be the team who looks back in a couple years and goes, wow, we traded away all that draft capital for a 35-year-old who is a great, great basketball player. But you're not winning the title if you trade for Kevin Durant. You're just not. And it's not worth being like a fun, really good team out west when you're on that natural progression anyways. That's going to happen. It might just be in 2-3 years. You're going to get there. You have a lot of basketball talent. And it's just interesting to me, that seeming like fixation that they have with winning now, because overpaying for Fred VanVleet and Dylan Brooks, that's one thing, okay. Those were objectively overpays, but you're trying to bring some veteran presences, some win now guys, some defensive toughness, build a culture. Show these guys what it means to at least win at the NBA level, not contend, but be a 500 team instead of just toiling in these 20-win seasons playing AAU basketball like it felt like the Rockets kind of were under Steven Silas. I see the value in that. But like this obsession with, okay, it has to be now, does not make sense given where they're at organizationally. They have so many assets that, yes, they can start thinking about making some win now trades, but apparently they really want Marcus Smart. I'm not sure that I get Marcus Smart when you already have Dylan Brooks. Like, don't you already have your awesome point of attack defender, crazy man, super questionable, inconsistent 3-point shooter? Like, that's not where I would necessarily be focused if I were Houston.
And you made a great point earlier, too, about other potential stars that could be available. Go get 26-year-old Brandon Ingram for New Orleans. Like, it seems like you could buy really low on him, right? New Orleans seems to act like he's expired goods. He fits your timeline so much more, you would give up way less future assets. And, again, Ingram is a guy who's still potentially ascending. He's still going up. KD is not, right? Like, there's just going to come a day where he's not the same guy. And, again, you could just buy so much lower on a guy like Ingram. You're not compromising all of your future assets. He's going to be way more competitive on the same timeline. Yeah, man, I just don't get why right now, why it's got to be. Udoka is doing such a phenomenal job of establishing this culture. And these guys are playing winning basketball. They finally did it last season. Just let this naturally happen. There's no need to rush this because, like you said, man, I feel like there's a lot more ways where this could blow up in Houston's face, than end up being some kind of great home run deal for them, man. I think they should look elsewhere.
And I don't love BI. I think he's probably just like a top 40 player at this point. I think he has his limitations with the lack of both high-end rim pressure or high-volume three-point shooting. Like, he's a little bit clunky, but at least he fits your timeline. He's not moving the needle in the same way that KD is, but neither guy is moving the needle far enough, in my opinion, for it to be like, hooray, we did it. And I would rather have the dude who it's like, okay, I'm comfortable paying him. And if this doesn't work out, okay, in 3-4 years, you could trade Brandon Ingram. You're still going to get good value back. KD is going to be just about done. I just think you have to think with more of that long-term perspective if you're Houston. One more trade rumor that has been popping up, Logan, and has been starting to really develop. Paul George to the Warriors. The Dubs are apparently willing to offer him the 4-year max, which the Clippers are not so inclined to do. They want to give him 3 years, and the reporting is that PG really wants that 4th year. It would have to be a sign and trade. The Warriors don't have the cap to sign him outright. Do you like that for the Warriors, Logan?
I'm conflicted, man. I'm really conflicted on this Paul George deal. It sucks because for so long we've talked about Golden State making that final move to put them over the top and to make them a competitive team again, a real genuine contender. I just don't know if Paul George does that, man. And I just don't know if there's any trade available for Golden State immediately where I'm like, man, this team is like a top-notch title contender out west again. And is it worth giving up a really young stud like Jonathan Kuminga? Is it worth giving up a guy like that to go and get a 34-year-old Paul George who didn't look great in these playoffs, if they could hold on to Klay Thompson, Carson, hold on to Steph, hold on to Klay, hold on to Dre, and add PG, maybe I'm moved enough. Because I know that everybody is off of Klay Thompson now. Klay still brings you that three-point shooting upside in individual basketball games where, he can help you win. And I know he went 0 of 10 in an elimination game. Thank you, guys. You have commented that enough across the internet. I realize that happened. But that matters to me, right? He's another valuable basketball player. What do you think that trade looks like, hypothetically, Carson? Like, if they did the sign and trade with the Clippers, what does that deal look like for Golden State?
I think it's probably basically Chris Paul for contract's sake and Jonathan Kuminga. Just because sign and trades are always interesting because obviously the player has a huge deal of say and can basically be like, hey, I don't want to play for you anymore. Send me where I want to go. But you're still going to get something back. Like, you still do have some leverage in that you can say, no, we won't do that. And now you can't go where you want to go. So I think that the Clippers, especially sending him to a divisional rival, would be well within their rights to demand Jonathan Kuminga.
I just don't know if Paul George makes them good enough, man. And it sucks. That's what stinks for Golden State, dude, is they've been dealing with this for 3 seasons. You've got one of the greatest players on planet Earth in Stephen Curry, and you want to maximize the years that he has left. You've got one of the best defensive players on planet Earth in Draymond Green, and you want to maximize the years that he has left. So, damn, man, we've been asking this question for Golden State for the past 3 years. For timeline's sake, I also wonder if it's just worth it. Let's make this team as competitive as you possibly can be for whatever years that we have left, but I don't think it makes them like a title favorite to me, and you wonder, is Kuminga ultimately going to reach this kind of star level where in 2 to 3 years when you aren't competitive with this core, is he going to be a real stud where you're like, damn, man, we gave that kind of guy up? To me, I just don't think the gap right now between like a Kuminga and a Paul George is great enough for me to want to do this deal. Really? And I think Paul George is great. I think he is a great number 3. There's a lot of things that he brings, man. Secondary ball handling, floor spacing, defense. There's a lot of great things that he brings, man. I just wonder when Kuminga's going to break through. And I don't want to sell Kuminga short before he breaks through. I think there's another level that Kuminga's going to reach as a basketball talent that we just haven't seen yet. And Paul George is on the decline. I'm a little hesitant to say I'd want to pull the trigger on this, although I do think it makes Golden State better. I think it helps them pick their timeline for the future. You as a Golden State fan, Carson, how do you feel? Do you think it's worth going all in on what timeline you have left with Curry and Dre?
I would do it. And I've been saying, to me, that's kind of the only decent option. It's what the Warriors should have been doing for several years. They should have traded Kuminga for Siakam. They should have traded the package of picks that they had with Wiseman and Moody and Kuminga for a win-now star. An OG Anunoby a couple years ago. Like, they have done a disservice to Steph Curry by sitting here on their hands and saying, oh, we're content with our roster. We think we can straddle 2 timelines. Hasn't worked out. It's incredible. They won the 2022 title, but everything since then has just shown you how impossible it is to sustain that sort of duality as a basketball team. You have to be all in around the greatest player in your franchise's history when that dude is still playing at a top 10 level. And Steph had a rough finish to this season. He's still unequivocally a top 10 player. So I would do this. And maybe I'm not as high on Kuminga as you. I mean, I think there's a big-ass gap between current Paul George and Jonathan Kuminga, and PG had an awesome season. He had career-best efficiency in terms of true shooting, unbelievable balance of dynamic off-ball, insane shot-making from beyond the arc, and then also the ability to still be a super efficient pick-and-roll and isolation creator. Like, the guy's really, really good, and yeah, you ask him to be one of your 2 lead offensive players down Kawhi Leonard against the Dallas Mavericks, and he is prone to maybe disappoint you in a setting like that. But Kuminga is a special athlete. I still have real concerns about everything on the periphery of that. The consistency of the jump shot, the shot selection, the complete lack of playmaking at this point, the fact that he's not the defender that he should be given his athletic traits. Like, he has the athleticism, everything else. I need to see significant improvement before I'm saying, okay, yeah, that dude is going to be a star in this league. I don't think Jonathan Kuminga will ever be as good as Paul George is right now. Is it too little too late if you trade for Paul George at this point? Yes, it is. You're not going to win the title, but I think it makes you clearly better. I think adding an elite shooting wing, a legit second option in the scope of the Warriors, because keep in mind who have been their second options. It's been disastrous lately. Adding some ball handling, adding defensive versatility, adding capable playmaking. Like, this team just needs way more juice, man. It has been painfully obvious how much they are lacking in athleticism, how much they are lacking in offensive skill around Steph Curry, and they've done a complete disservice to him. So it's going to suck if you have to trade Kuminga. Maybe there's a way that this is a Wiggins-centric thing and they don't have to do it, but I would be really surprised if the Clippers accepted that. I do not expect that to be the case. I think you are going to give up Kuminga, and so in some ways you are then selling a potentially important part of your future. The best possible thing, if we were speaking in purely objective terms, that the Warriors could do right now would be to trade Steph Curry, get an absolute haul, trade everybody, and just hit reset, rebuild, because I don't think there's a way for them to open up a title window currently. I just think their core is aged too much. The supporting cast isn't strong enough. They don't have the necessary maneuverability to get into the conversation with a Denver, for example. But they're not going to do that. Never in a million years would they trade Steph Curry. So to me, the next best thing is to at least honor him. Say, let's get you a star who fits. We don't care about his age. We're not worried about our future after Steph as much as we are doing what we can to be a really good basketball team with him. Not necessarily even a title contender, just a really good basketball team. And you can say, well, that's a bad philosophy to be short-sighted, to be that focused on the immediate as opposed to the future. And that's where I would again say, you just can't do the two timeline things, because that's what they're still doing with Jonathan Kuminga. You have to pick a direction. You trade Steph Curry, or you do everything you can to become a really good basketball team with him. And Paul George would help you do the latter, and I would do that, therefore.
Yeah, in every game that you pass, you're sacrificing that. My thing with Kuminga is I think he could be. It sucks because I think he's like 3 to 4 years away. I think Kuminga could be somewhat of like a Jalen Brown kind of light or a Jalen Brown-esque player. But again, he's years away from that. And I think you make a great
39 in 3 years. Jonathan Kuminga will be 24. He wouldn't even be starting what we consider an NBA player's prime.
Mm-hmm. But you're right, though. Golden State's never going to trade Steph Curry. Considering that fact, you have to maximize the time that you get. I would much prefer if Golden State could go out and get a Lauri Markkanen or someone younger that is great now but is also going to be great in a couple of years where you could potentially retain them. But at
I
this
just don't
point,
think they
it's
have the assets in that horse race. I mean, if OKC wants him, Golden State can't compete with that. If Houston wants him, Golden State can't compete with that.
Exactly. So I think you take what's available. You've talked me into it, man. We've just had this as just removing all emotional sentiment away from it, removing all heart out of this. I do think the most smart basketball move would to be move off of Steph and to move off of Draymond and to just move into the future. But you're right. Like, Golden State would never do that. Steph is their guy. Steph is the cornerstone. Steph is the franchise. So you've talked me into it, man. If that's the only deal on the trade to make you better, you go and do it, man. And you just bite the bullet and you say, this is how good we're going to be. And you try to build the best roster around them. It's not good enough to win the title, frankly. And if that's your goalpost, then sorry. But you got to do what you can to make this team competitive enough, because it's going to suck for Steph next season, man. If they don't make any move, Steph is going to have this Superman kind of offensive load on his shoulders every single game. Yeah. And it's just going to be the exact same result at the end of next year. Steph is going to be at his wit's end by the end of this season, and we are going to see in these individual game formats, if they make the play-in or if we get into the playoffs, it's just going to be too much. Like, I don't even think Golden State has a chance of getting out of the first round if they run this thing back with just Steph. Like, Steph needs help. And that's the ultimate point in all this, is Stephen Curry needs somebody else who can help him win basketball games, and Paul George does that. So we got to get off the timeline, man. It's got to be this offseason. Yeah. You've got to make a move right now, man. You got to strike while the iron's hot. And if Paul George wants to come play with you, I think you do the deal, man. You've talked me into it, dude. I think you just have to do this for Steph's sake.
Agreed. And then we'll see how the Warriors can build out this roster through the rest of the offseason. We'll see if they can add another quality big, which is certainly a priority. We'll see what they can do with Wiggins, who I think is really a negative asset at this point. But they just need more athleticism. They need more shot making. They need more ball handling. Wing defense is always a plus. PG provides all of that. And you just got to add that firepower. Man, you're not going to get there with just moves on the margins. You know, adding Goga Batadze would be a good value pickup, not moving the needle when you consider how far away this team has been. And you mentioned Klay. If Klay gets what it sounds like he's gonna on the open market, you just got to let him walk. I mean, Klay is a guy who I would be willing to pay like $15 million a year, and that's it. And if he's getting 30, I'm just not taking part in that if I'm the Warriors. I just think the defensive regression, the shot selection, the offensive volatility, the fact that he's always been very singularly dependent on the shot making, but like it's just gotten more and more so about that, and more frustrating when he's off. He's just not a core piece of what you're trying to do, and I would rather have some flexibility and see what you can do with a little bit more cap in a spot like that. Just try to add some quality rotational wings. I think guys like that could have more impact. All right, there you have it. Lots of off-season news to discuss, and of course that will only continue with the draft tonight, which we will be reacting live to, and then we're going to do a reaction show to that tomorrow, and then we're going to do a free agency preview towards the end of this week, and then we're going to have our free agency reaction. So stay tuned in. You know where to find all your off-season stuff right here, right now, baby. And if you want our trivia content as well, which of course we're cranking out through the off-season, we did an episode with Tyler, Hoop Venue, this Monday. We have multiple more that we're recording that will be released over the coming weeks with some really fun guests. So that's going to be on our YouTube channel. And you can, of course, listen to all of this on your podcast feed as well. And you can follow us across social, TikTok, Instagram, Nerd Sesh, Twitter at nerd_sesh for some of that short form trivia content, clips from the show, etc. If you want to join our Discord, you can do so at the link that is in our link tree across our social media bios. And if you want to check out our merch, you can do so at thevolume.com. So with that, as always, appreciate you guys. See you for the draft tonight. I've been Carson Brabber.
I've been Logan Camden.
And this was Nerd Sesh.